So let me explain it once again over this thing. So these are the two things which are always there in our individual component. What are they? HTML,
JavaScript.
correct, and JavaScript. Okay. So data binding always happen in this direction. Okay. So let's say this was my parent component. Okay. And now I have this child component. Okay. Where again I have a HTML and I have a JavaScript. And in this case also, every time data binding happens in this direction. Okay, so this was our example. Now what was happening, that Venkata was defined here initially, correct? In first name, I think. Let's go there. This is not parent component, first name. Venkata was defined here. What we did, first of all, we called the child component inside the HTML of parent, correct? Where here we did it using kebab casing. Okay. So we called the child component here. Then what we did, we can easily bring this Venkata to this child component, but this child component needs to have a public property. And where do we want from where do we bring that public property? We will create a public property here using @API decorator. Okay. Once we define a property with @API prefix, we should be able to use it here inside the child component call. And we will then assign this value to this child component. Okay. Once that value is assigned, which value? This child property, which was defined in the child component JavaScript. Okay. Once this value is assigned to child property, data will flow to this child property. That means data will go in this direction. Okay. And again, the regular data binding, we can display that value in the child component HTML. Okay. So the flow is going from this to this, this to this, and this to this. Okay. Try going through the video once.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely I'll do that tomorrow.
Let's see one more example related to parent to child. So what I'll do, I'll keep it like this way only. So in parent component, let's say I have a array of objects, let's say players. And in array, I have two players record. Let's say first player is data we have is name Virat, and age is second player which we have is name. Let's see Dhoni. And age we have is, and what is the issue? So this is a simple array of objects. I hope you can recall this. Correct. So this is my array starting with square brackets. Okay, and it has two objects. First one is this object. Second one is this object. Okay. So we have learned template for each loop. Correct. So with the help of template for each, we have two directors for each and for item. Okay, we can display the name of both of them in my HTML file. But in this case, what we want is, I don't want to print them in my HTML file. I want them to print in my child HTML. Okay, I don't want the data inside my parent HTML. I want the data inside my child component to be displayed. That means I don't want that in the red colored this box. I want that in yellow color. Okay, so we will see how data flow will happen from parent to child. Okay, so let's say okay, players is this one, and what we will do, we will create a button in the parent component, lightning button. Upon clicking that button, I would like to display the data in the child. Okay, so I have a button. What attributes I can give to my button? Label I can give is display player name. Okay, and button should have an event and event handler. Okay, on click, this we have already learned, and I'll assign a event handler to it. So same thing, child component we have already included. Okay, let's say players data to pass. This is my property which should have the data whenever this button is clicked. Okay, so I'll define this property there, players data to pass in my parent component, and I'll make it a blank initially. What I will do, upon click of this button, I will write some logic inside this event handle click. This is the event handler for that button. And what I will do, once this button is clicked and the control comes to handle click, I will assign this. How can I access this? Using this, correct? Players data to pass, and I will assign it with players. How can I assign it? Using this dot players. What is happening? Let's discuss once again. This is my initial data, okay, and this is my blank array. What I am doing, I have a button inside my parent component. Its name is display player name. It has an event handler called handle click. Okay, so whenever I will be clicking this button, control will go to handle click. What I am doing inside my handle click, I am assigning data to this player's data to pass from the players, and I am binding this player's data to pass to where? To my child property. Okay, so whenever I will click this button, only then it will get passed to child. Okay, now this child property, let's come to the JavaScript, is holding the data. Let's assume that we have already clicked the button. Now coming back to our template for each loop, and let's forget this parent component. This is holding the data. I can use the template for loop inside my child component. And what all directives do template accepts for each and
For index.
item.
Hmm.
So for each accepts what? Array. Array is what in this case? Child property, which is accepting an entire array from the parent. Okay. So I'll pass this child property to my for each here. And this is a dummy variable we have to take. Let's say I'll give it a name item. Now, what was a mandatory thing inside our template for each? Key. So I have to pass a key. Key will comprise of what? Individual, unique element from that object. We can give it a name. Okay. So I'll pass item dot name here. And what I want to print is the name. So again, I can bind it here. Item dot name. So I'll repeat it again. Whatever we have done, let's first see if it is working. I'll do a hard refresh. And see, right now my child component is kind of closed because nothing was there. When I'm clicking this button, it is displaying me the data in the child component. How it is happening? Let's start once again the entire flow. What is happening? It is the primary responsibility, as discussed. It is the primary responsibility of the JavaScript file to hold the initial data. Okay. What was possible? I could have binded this player's data with some template for each loop in my parents HTML, but I wanted to display my data inside my child component, so I have to pass it. And what condition I have put? I want that data to be passed on a click of a button. Okay, so this is the button I have created. Then button has an event and event handler. This we have already studied. So whenever button will be clicked, on click will get triggered. On click will pass the control to this event handler. Inside event handler handle click, what we are doing, we are assigning this dot players dot data to pass with the original player data. Okay, and this variable we have already binded with our child property. Okay, so child property was what? It was a property inside my child component JavaScript, which was decorated with @API decorator. And what is the purpose of this @API decorator? Because of this @API only, we were able to access this child property in my parent component. And again, I have used kebab casing here. Wherever capital was coming, I have made it smaller. Okay. So now, once we click this button, my child property inside my child component will be holding the entire data of Virat and Dhoni. Okay. And now using a regular template for each, I can bind these two, JavaScript and HTML. What I have done, I have used my template for each, and I have passed the entire array here in my for each directive. And this is my dummy variable, which will pick one element at a time from that array. First of all, it will pick Virat. What it will do, it will check the key for it. Key should be unique element. So name is a unique element from that object. I have used name. And we want to print the name also only. So it will print Virat first. Again, the for loop will go here. It will pick Dhoni object and it will print its name. So in this way, when we are clicking that button, we are able to pass the data from parent to child, and we are ultimately displaying the data inside my child.